Welcome to the Whole Career Podcast with Advent Health. I'm Brandon Strawn, and I'm joined by my co-host, Sky Kellogg.
Each episode features conversations with various healthcare professionals who will share their personal career journeys, insights, and perspectives on various healthcare careers. From nursing to technology to leadership, we'll cover a wide range of topics to help you stay informed and inspired.
Whether you're just starting out in your healthcare career, looking to pivot, or a seasoned professional looking to take the next step, this podcast is for you. We hope to empower you with the knowledge and the tools needed to make a positive impact in your field. At Advent Health, we believe that we are greater as a whole, and we invite you to join us on this journey as we explore the world of healthcare careers together.
Here we go.
Welcome back to the Whole Career Podcast, and I'm excited because today we have Stacey Eich with us. Welcome, Stacey. How are you doing today?
Thank you very much. I'm doing very well. Thank you.
Awesome. So would you mind just formally introducing yourself and giving us an overview of your title and your current role with Advent Health?
Sure, I would love to. So first of all, thanks for this opportunity. I think it's a great experience to take part. I am blessed to serve as our West Florida Division Director of Education and Onboarding. So that title just means I have the opportunity to serve all of our 13 campuses within our West Florida Division and support the realm of education in all of our campuses.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Stacey, and we're so grateful to have you today. So if you could just tell us what makes a good educator. What qualities do you typically look for when you're adding to your team?
So education is very special to me. So I know the number one quality is to be relational. We literally are the backbone of the organization. We build it from the foundation up and really take part with every department that exists. So being able to have relationships with other departments and within the team is super important to me. Also, the passion. You got to love what you do. I am a big believer that if you love what you do, it won't feel like work. And that's really what I look for.
Wonderful. And if you could just kind of tell our listeners what other departments you are working with on a daily basis to kind of paint the picture for our listeners.
Sure. So education, everybody always goes to, we have a problem, call education. So really my vision for this department is to move from a reactive model like that to be proactive and know who the key people are we want to interact with before they actually need us. So education, if done right, is about providing the information and support before there's an actual issue. So currently we're working with all departments, whether that's nursing or our clinical non-nursing areas, our risk, our quality departments. We all need each other. And my favorite part of the Bible when it comes to education is in Romans 12, where it talks about we're one body, but we're made up of many different parts and we all have different gifts. So when we lean on each other, it's how we can really push our organization forward.
So thank you so much for sharing that, Stacey. And it's interesting that you bring up that people believe that, education is problem solving, because I actually thought the opposite. I thought education is only when nurses are beginning and that's it. So I just wanted to ask really quickly, can you kind of debunk that myth for me in my head that, education is only at the very beginning or initially when you're onboarding? So what are some of the things that you're doing as an educator past just that onboarding portion, when nurses or the clinical employees are just starting?
Sure. So obviously we have a big component of onboarding. So we take our brand new nurses or our new hires and we welcome them into our organization. But then it's about that professional growth. Like, what do we do now that we're in and we've established that baseline competency? How can we continue you to grow? So we do that through different externships or internships where we take you from one level of care and give you the tools to grow and learn either a higher skill set in acuity, like going from a medical surgical nurse to an intensive care nurse or an emergency room nurse, and then really pushing you. I have a big push right now within my own leadership team of certification. So how do we really become that subject matter expert in our specific field by studying and looking at the intricate pieces of the work we do every day and obtain a certification that really elevates our care as an individual?
And Stacey, if you could just describe the influential power that you have as an educator within the facility and really the organization overall.
Sure. I love that because that is why I chose education. So My background was progressive care nursing. And when patient experience became a thing where we actually really honed in on scores and reimbursement, I got chosen to really represent my unit on patient experience because I was nice, right? Like we take that quality for granted sometimes, but it was really then when I realized that the intentionality of connecting with your patients and connecting with your team, that you really have that influence that really carries patient care forward. My children were actually in a really bad car accident this summer. And as a nurse for 23 years, that was the very first time I was on the other side of the bed where I had to experience what it was like to have a care team surrounded around my favorite people in the world and have to rely on them to get me through. And it really changed my whole perspective, even 23 years into my career, that what we say matters, how we say it, and how we really take that opportunity to connect can make all the difference in the world. I'm very blessed that God had chosen to spare my children, and they are alive, healthy, well functioning, just as before. But the takeaway from that is that our influence is something that no one should take for granted. And that showing up to work every day allows you to really connect with your team, which extends that healing ministry of Christ right onto our patients.
Stacey, that's a beautiful example. And I think that's so important for our listeners that are in the clinical space or even in the non-clinical space to remember that even, like you said, 23 years into your career, that you can still have your perspective change and you can grow and learn from experiences and that impacts how you care for your patients. So thank you for sharing that. I'm so glad that they are okay and safe and healthy. But I appreciate you sharing that story.
So, Stacey, I want to, because you kind of already touched on your background and even you bringing up, you realize how important patient experience and when they started actually, I guess tracking that and scoring that. Can you take us back to the beginnings of Stacey Eich and kind of how you developed into, where you are now? Can you just take us on that journey really quickly?
Sure. So I was blessed to be that one individual, like many of our new nurses are struggling with today. Actually was not successful the very first time I took my boards. So 23 years ago, you think your life is over because you do all this hard work in school and you're not successful. So back then, God was already preparing me for this role, as now that actually is breaking the ice with some of our new grads coming out of school and aren't successful the first time. That it just shows that determination and that drive to continue to push through. So once I did pass the second time. I went right into medical surgical nursing and learned my time management, prioritization, all those important skills, and then wanted to grow. So I was actually hired into University Community Hospital 14 years into my career. And then I got to be part of the development of Advent Health. So we went from University Community to Florida Hospital Tampa to Advent Health Tampa, and was blessed to represent our name change when Terry Shaw invited us to Orlando to have that big unveiling and become one team and one mission and one vision for an organization. So from there, I worked progressive care and fell into education. At that point, I was an ADN nurse with 2 years of experience in schooling, but 14 years of nursing. And I was like, I don't need to go back to school. I can already save your life. Why would I need to go back to school? But was surrounded by a very strong education team that loved on me and showed me the way to grow and how to continue to push myself. So loving patient experience led me to teach it in new hire orientation, where I started to put together that influence you have from the very first day they enter our building. Being able to grow on that and have those DNPs and PhDs surrounded around me, I went and obtained my bachelor's degree in nursing and continued for my master's. So from there, I was offered the opportunity to lead the education team at Advent Health Carrollwood. So Charity Carlisle is the CNO over there. I give her huge kudos for taking a shot on me, giving me kind of my first official leader role. And then I was blessed to meet Robin Jones, who then brought me to our division role, where her and I, alongside our other division team members, have been able to grow our organization forward. It's been pretty exciting.
That is amazing. And I appreciate you just, and I think even you starting that story off, letting people know, including the fact that, hey, I did not pass on my first try, right? Just so many, different highlights of encouragement, throughout your story for others. And I can say, I'll just kind of a quick commercial break. I have been, as a recruiter, I would go out to the nursing schools that we have in the surrounding areas. And at times we go ahead and we have the educators join us on those recruitment trips. And Stacey has been on some of those trips. And I can honestly say you are very good at using your influence, with the students, right? Using your story with the students. So I've been able to see it firsthand. Obviously, I have had a front row seat, but I just wanted to say it's awesome. I think as Advent Health grows and as you're, some would say in a very high position within the company, your ability to still stay connected to those nurses that are even in school, right? Not waiting until they actually get to your front door at the hospital, but taking it a step further and making sure that you're meeting them even at the nursing schools. I can honestly say that the feedback that I got from those trips that I was, on with you was really great from the nursing students. So I remember that, and I wanted to just take a quick break to say that and affirm you because I know I would forget.
Thank
But
you.
yeah.
Thank you.
No, that's great, Brandon, and really that leads me into my next question in regards to your passion, right, for engaging with and investing with students and new grads. So, what's the best piece of advice that you can share with the nursing student who is listening right now?
I think the best piece of advice is be patient. Be patient. It's not something that you will ever be prepared for. Nursing has just changed so much, even during COVID. But school really prepares you to take a test. It prepares you to answer yes and no questions and maybe a little bit of critical thinking. But when you actually see a live patient in the bed where your entire job is to keep them alive and walk them through their journey back to health, that's a big undertaking. And if you're not patient with yourself, you can get burnout and you can get frustrated. And that is something we don't want to see. So remain humble, stay patient. And my number one piece of advice is ask questions. If you don't ask questions, you'll never know the answer. And that's how you learn and you grow. Even in a regular relationship or anything life brings your way, we only learn by asking questions. So those are my big takeaways.
So staying on the topic of, new grads, what are some of the things that, as far as the residency program, right? Can you just talk about the educators responsibility or their involvement in the residency program? And honestly, be as detailed as you like. A lot of our listeners may not understand the residency program, even nurses who are in school, right? Because as it's growing more so as a standardization across the nation to have a residency program, I still think there are a lot of nurses, especially in my times going to the schools, right, where they don't really understand, like, okay, what is a residency program? I'm confused. I guess my question would be, can you explain what the residency program is, and as a director of education, what an educator's responsibility and involvement is within the residency program?
Sure. So I love our residency programs. So when I graduated nursing school, you got like 6 weeks with a preceptor and good to go. So now Advent Health really pours into the success of their new nurses coming out of school from the clinical rotation. So we do partner with surrounding nursing schools where we provide our campuses to be their clinical support where they can do clinicals and start learning not only how to care for patients and develop those skills, but also be ingrained in our culture so that when they do graduate, they have that passion to come and join our team. But once selected into our residency program, it is a program designed to take the new grad right out of school that is newly licensed and provide them the tools and support needed to grow into their professional career. So it can be anywhere from 12 to 20 weeks based on the unit you're hired to. Like our medical surgical nurses get 12 weeks, and then up to our ICU and ED, since those are higher acuity, they do get further orientation. But once those 12 to 20 weeks is over, they also have professional growth where we walk beside them for a full year. They'll have developmental workshops that really push them out of their comfort zone. We have an evidence-based project that we walk alongside them with for their development to learn something on their unit that they might want to change, bringing in that shared governance where the people doing the work are designing the work. And we really encourage that. So I am blessed to work around Megan Milborn, who's our learning operations manager, and her sole focus is our program. And our Advent Health has walked alongside of our West Florida division, and we are currently going for accreditation of this residency program. So that is a hot commodity. We want to get it. We want to obtain it. So we have put through over 500 newly licensed nurses in 2023. In order to help their success, we do provide them a robust program, including simulation and skills, where they actually come in a safe environment. We always say no one dies in sim, where they can actually work with high fidelity mannequins or real life individual actors to be able to walk through critical thinking scenarios that they'll see in their daily flow. So we can coach and encourage and allow them to get their nerves out. So when they are focused on the unit in a real life situation, they're ready to go without any angst. So super happy to be part of this team. Chloe Martin is actually our simulation strategist, and she has done amazing work with making these scenarios be lifelike. And it really has shown to be robust. We collect data before they come on where their skill set level is. And then we also test them when they're completed with their simulation and skills. And the data that we've collected on that is huge. The impact that it's making is really providing that support for that nurse to be competent when they hit the floor.
That's incredible. And over 500 nursing students, you said, have gone through that just this year alone. That's amazing. And as Stacey said, pouring in to our new team members is so important, and investing them in early allows them to feel cared for and loved, which is our goal here at Advent Health. But Stacey, I want to change gears a little bit and talk about how you engage with and challenge current team members to complete continued learning. Obviously, it is easier when they, don't have a choice, right? When they're just joining the organization and they have to learn. But how do you encourage and engage those current team members to do that continued learning?
That's a great question, because nobody wants to keep learning. I mean, I was living proof of that. I am a 2-year degree nurse and I can save your life. So why do I need to keep learning? But what I have learned in all of that is you have to make it fun. You have to lead by example. So that is one thing that I will never do something that I would expect my team member to do. So leading by example. And then once you actually put yourself in the shoes of the team member requirements, it really helps you focus, because now I have a little bit of power on how I can either make that more engaging or make it more streamlined. So a lot of my focus since I took this position was standardizing education. Unfortunately, with 13 different sites, we have 13 different ways of doing things. And our team members go from hospital to hospital sometimes. So the redundancy of education was something that I've really focused on how to bring it down to the same thing, whether that's onboarding expectations or annual requirements. And then really explaining the why. So people get grumpy when they have to do all these ALNs per se, but explaining the why behind it. Our Joint Commission and DNV accrediting bodies require us to be up to date with the evidence-based practice that's out there as it pertains to certain areas of our job. So even though the team member doesn't feel like it's impactful for their daily flow, it is a requirement. So something we have to do. So one thing we did in 2023 is we took our annual requirements and we cut it down into quarters. So our teams only had to do 10 modules a quarter instead of 70 all at one time. So just looking at their opinions and their feedback, I always go to the source. If I want to change something, let's see what's going to work. And then as an educator, you're super flexible. So what we roll out looks good on paper, and then we get a lot of feedback that it doesn't, and we can backtrack, try again. But really, it's explaining the why. When it comes down to the why and people understand the ask, they're more able to complete the requirement.
That is amazing. And I appreciate your answer and how thoughtful Advent Health is truly being to understanding the people that are doing, right, or are doing the work, right? And I think that's amazing. And if I was to ask a question, just to go back a little bit, so you said that there is onboarding requirements and then annual requirements and then are there opportunities for the nurses to learn that is not required, and what do those certifications or maybe some of those classes look like within Advent Health? Like, where should the nurses who are looking and I guess searching for those opportunities that aren't required, where do they go? Where, whether it's online or speaking to their advisor or nurse manager, like how does that work?
So I think it's a lot of folds of everything you just mentioned. So the education team, we are blessed that we are now a divisional program. So as we come together and standardize practice, we really got to look at the modality of delivery. Like, how are people going to find out what we're doing? Is that our lens boards? Is that communication? Is that newsletters, emails? As an educator, you've got to understand that people learn very differently. And some are visual learners, some need to touch it, some need to hear it. And the different modalities of that is what will get the information across to all campuses and all team members. So really, as we standardize, it's coming across as West Florida Division instead of Advent Health Sebring or Advent Health Ocala. So our teams are starting to see that we are getting kind of our ducks in a row, so to speak. And so some of our classes that we're standardizing are actually offered at every single campus. So it's not that it has to be one campus, but being West Florida Division, we're offering curriculum to all campuses that's exactly the same. So it opens up their horizons to be able to have further opportunities. I think of our preceptor class. That is our first thing that we standardized. And the need for preceptors is huge, to have that mentorship walking beside either a new hire or a new grad. We want to give them the tools to be successful. Just because you're a good nurse doesn't mean you're going to be a good teacher. So understanding the tools needed and how to really communicate with a new team member, that's huge. And, through COVID, we needed everybody to be a preceptor because we were having a lot of travel agency and a lot of turnover, and that preceptor kind of got watered down because we just didn't have the staff. So now that we're post-COVID and able to pour into our preceptors, that class has been offered over 40 times this year throughout 13 campuses, where if we were just looking at it at one campus, we wouldn't have the bandwidth to support 40 classes.
Well, I'm impressed. And every now and then on these podcasts, I learn so much that I'm like mind blown. So that's pretty much where I am now. And I wanted to follow that up with, you mentioned that not every nurse, may be an educator. What are some of the qualities of an educator that, what are some of the qualities that a nurse might need to have, to be a good educator?
Yeah, patience, flexibility. Even in my old age of nursing, I have learned that it's not instant gratification. So when you are building something and looking at it from the ground up, it takes time to get there. And frustration can come into play very quickly, because as a nurse, when I was at the bedside, you give your meds, you see the patient get better, and we're on with the next patient. Whereas in education, it's a process, and it takes time to pour into your person you're working with. And to watch them grow is what fills my bucket. So if there's any takeaway for an educator, it's to see the fruits of your labor, which sometimes are a year or 2 years. I look at Advent Health Tampa, since that was my roots. And some of my nurse residents right out of school when I was a unit-based educator are now in the intensive care unit, or they're assistant nurse managers, or they're rapid response nurses. And I can look at them with so much joy and pride that I had even just a little bit to do with their growth and their push to become better in their professional career.
And Stacey, I want to go back to one aspect that you mentioned earlier in regards to communication and standardization. You mentioned a lens board. For those that are listening, would you be able to give just a brief description of the lens board and then how you use that for new nurses to be able to have a voice on your units?
So being 47, my technology is growing, right? I have to move with the ages. I remember when I was in my bachelor's program, which was not that long ago, I actually had to have my teenage son help me upload something to YouTube. So learning technology is fun for us older people. However, the lens boards has come into play and is amazing. It's just a platform of communication that is live and interactive. It looks like a TV, and you can upload information to it. It's a touch screen. So if I wanted to do education, I could actually put a QR code on there, which would allow the team that instant review of a certain skill, or if there's different communication going out house-wide, that can be the platform to use. I laugh, there's an ICU manager at Carrollwood who actually got married, and she used her lens board to help pick her wedding dress. So she actually put a stick figure on her lens board for her team, and they would copy and paste different wedding dresses. So it has the ability to send pictures, upload it, so you can be off on vacation and share your vacation with your team. So it's a very interactive board of communication in a nutshell, but lots of diversity of the ways it can be used.
And going into that, which I love the human aspect, right? That's brought by the lens board, and that it allows you all to connect even when you're not working the same shift, or even if you're not in the same state, right? So I do really love that aspect. And can you talk a little bit about how there is a reporting aspect to the lens board, and how whether new or seasoned team members are able to share either concerns or things that they've noticed, and how that allows them to have a voice, even if their name necessarily isn't attached to it?
Sure. So Advent Health does a great job with having a safe platform to be able to share thoughts and feelings. We don't do it perfect, right? We're not a perfect organization, and that's my favorite thing about us. But we do have that platform that you can upload things, whether it's comments or concerns, and it can go to our departments that can really look into that and really hear you as an employee and a team member, and be able to carry out some actionable items to make sure that you are heard.
So, Stacey, how competitive is the landscape for educators right now?
That's a great question. So I love education because we don't have a lot of turnover, because we really are very selective in the people that we bring in, because they're passionate. Nobody wants to leave a job that they're passionate in. I do think that amongst other organizations, our education team works very differently. So when I took this role, a lot of my research was, how's everybody else doing it? You know, you want me to bring 13 campuses together. There's no rule book. This is the how to be a director of education. So I did a lot of research with our other competitors, and being a nurse, you geared towards other nurses. So I do have friends that work for other healthcare organizations, and really it's competitive, to say the least. It's just an opportunity to pour into others, really gives that platform that when you pour into others, you actually get that much back in your own bucket. So we don't lose a lot of team members. We hire very slowly. I've had my Heart of Florida, I just filled that manager role about a month ago, but it was open for a long time, because it really takes a special person to be able to jump into education and have that passion and the patience to understand that you're not the Band-Aid, you're not the fire extinguisher, you're the grower, and you have to have patience for that.
Awesome. And a follow-up to that would be, where are you all getting the curriculum from, right? Obviously, I'm assuming that everyone huddles up, and meets to talk about what they're going to go out and forge a new path, through education. But what are some of the ways that you all are developing the curriculum, and maybe what outside partners do you use?
That's a great question. So I will tell you right now that education is not the smartest person in the building. So even though we are actually asked for our opinion in many different facets, we're not the subject matter experts, but we do know how to do the research. So American Nurses Association, all of our associations for critical care, for med-surg, those nursing platforms are where we get a lot of our curriculum. For me, our vision is to follow the nurse professional development model, which really centers around the mission and vision of an organization and allows you to build that education with that as the center. So we do a lot of journal article reviews. Part of my leadership is once a month, one of my leaders will bring forward an article or a book with leadership that they are reading that has some evidence-based practice in it, and then we talk about it, right? So as an educator, we have to learn and grow and evolve with the times. I mean, hence the lens board and the technology that I have to learn. So staying up to practice with journal articles and our American Nurses Association is really where our curriculum stems from.
Thank you, Stacey. And one thing that you had mentioned, obviously, was keeping in touch with what competitors are doing. So what are some of the things that you would say, in your personal opinion, or could be evidence-based as well, that Advent Health is doing better in the education space than our competitors?
So I love Advent Health. I can't imagine working for anyone else. And that's very personal to me because I'm a homegrown nurse, right? I was a bedside nurse turned educator, turned manager, turned director. And all of that was from the growth of the leaders surrounded me. So I think it's super important. I had the opportunity to go to our Magnet conference in Chicago just a couple weeks ago, and watching the platform of growth with other organizations speaking to best practice, I was like, we're already doing this. I was actually a little upset because we didn't have a big voice at this conference. And I was like, I wonder whose job that is. And I was like, that's probably my job to really take what we're doing and push it forward because we are doing so many great things. Having a residency program accredited or chosen to even work towards that speaks volumes of what we're offering our newly licensed nurses to come into an organization. I always bring up pay. It's a thing, right? We have competitive pay. And that is a big eye opener for our young nurses coming out of school that are looking for that. Our millennials and our younger people than that are always looking for which grass is greener. Where's it going? And they'll leave for 20 cents down the road. But living our service standards and standing on our mission really sets us apart. Being a faith-based hospital is something that independently stands us against everybody else. When my kids were in the car accident, the amount of love that I received from everybody, not just education, from nursing leaders, from the C-suites across the organization, it was hands down just very humbling to see that Advent Health really surrounds themselves, and we really are a family.
Beautifully said, Stacey. And I think that's so important, whether you're already a team member with us or if you're considering joining Advent Health, to keep those things in mind, to either be grateful and remember the support that you have here, or to look forward to the type of support that you could receive here at Advent Health. So I appreciate you sharing that.
Stacey, I wanted to ask, what are some of the gaps that you are seeing in new nursing students right now? And what are some of the things that you're doing to bridge those gaps once they're in your facility?
That's a great question. So there's a lot of different opinions out there, but I always say it stems to communication. So having effective communication is not something that's taught in school. It's not part of the nursing curriculum. And unfortunately, our newly licensed nurses are coming out thinking they know everything because they passed a test. And they don't have that communication to say, hey, I don't quite understand. Can you help me? Or they go into a patient's room, they do all their checkbox things, and they don't even say hello or good morning. So the gap of communication, it speaks volumes in itself of just being able to connect with their patient, connect with their team. We have some of our newly licensed nurses coming out that don't even have the skill set. They've never seen an IV start or a Foley insert or the basic things that we think they should know. So having open communication of where your foundation actually starts will allow the educator to really set a platform for success, to really focus and hone in on the skills that are needed that might be assumed that you should know, but they actually don't know. So I say communication all the way.
Just a quick follow-up to speaking towards the nurses that may not be able to communicate what they don't know, because I'm thinking about the fact that maybe some of those nurses or any employer, right, communicating what they don't know may be tough for them, because then it may seem as if, okay, well, maybe my job would be in jeopardy, or maybe how my manager views me may change because of what I don't know. So maybe you have an example, maybe you have advice or a tip, like how may a nurse or even any employee, right, this can cover so many different professions, but how do you communicate that, right, if you don't know, especially if you're new and you're like just trying to get by? What would be a tip that you can give us to help navigate that?
Sure. I think it's intentionality of that first meeting, right? So we have done great work to standardize a competency, which is really a set of skills that a nurse is expected to perform based on the unit they're hired to. And part of that is we have a pretest. So on one side of the competency, it allows that newly licensed nurse to take a look at the skills expected, and they can grade themselves. Are they great at it? Are they not great at it? So it sets that preceptor up right away to focus on those skills that may not be known. But as a unit-based educator, part of that scope is to have that communication behind closed doors of how's it going? Education is like mama bear. When I was unit-based, I had a therapy hat, I had a mama bear hat, I had a big sister hat. because we're their safe spot. There's not accountability to us. So it's that open door where they can really be transparent with those things that they might not be willing to bring to their nursing leadership per se, but their educator, they can kind of be a little more transparent with needs that they have. And then it's our job to walk alongside, whether that's work one-to-one with them or provide more time in the simulation area or create the opportunities in a different way to help them be successful.
So communication is the resounding theme here in this conversation. And I do think that is key and so important for those listening, especially if you are considering where your next employer may be, that Advent Health is open to hearing what you have questions about, and that you don't have to have that fear, and that you have leaders like Stacey that are going to pour into you and answer those questions and not judge you for not knowing, but get alongside of you and help you get to where you need to be to give your patients the best care possible. So I appreciate you sharing that, Stacey, and for hopefully relieving maybe some stress of new grads and those maybe thinking of joining the organization that are scared to ask for help. But changing gears a little bit again, I just want to talk about what at the director level or even manager level, what are the requirements that you all have for working different units or being on the floor, so that we can keep up to date on what it feels like to be that floor nurse and how to properly connect with them?
Sure. So as an educator, when I took my role, we had over 40 job descriptions of what an actual clinical educator was. So it was very interesting to take 40-ish job descriptions and bring it down. And it's really following the NPD model of how are we going to be a best practice education team for Advent Health? And that requirement really is a master's degree. So it just allows you to have the experts in education. So I laugh at that because my master's is in leadership. But education or leadership, it just gives you those foundational tools of how to walk alongside individuals and really connect with them versus be really good at your job. I've seen it time and time again where we think the best educator is going to be the nurse that's most proficient in their skill set. But if they don't have a way to communicate or have any patience, then it's not going to be successful. So technically on paper, you need to be a bachelor's prepared nurse to be an educator. My leadership team is composed of all master's prepared nurses. And because I want to push them out of their comfort zone in their first year, I want them all to be certified. So I'm happy to say I'm about 85% complete in that, because I want to have the best team and I want everyone to look at us as role models. And what better way to lead that pack than have everyone have their certification?
That is amazing. I think the level of just competitiveness, wanting to be the best, that's what honestly makes us feel alive, right? That's what pushes us to continue to try and be the employer of choice for all of our employees, right? So I wanted to ask, as far as mentorship, right? I know that you have a great mentor. Would you mind just giving us some background on how you found that mentor and what it was like, right, working with your mentor, and how you were able to I guess learn what you did and then take it to another level?
I'm so proud to say that in my professional career, I've had so many great leaders surrounding me. So being mentored wasn't even intentional, wasn't even a thought, like I need to schedule a meeting. But the very first individual that began to pour into me as a bedside nurse was Diane Reed. And she currently works at Moffitt now, but she was at Advent Health Tampa. And she really saw something in me that maybe I didn't see in myself and was diligent to pull it out of me. So we always say we want competent nurses. We want nurses to be able to do the skill and provide safe quality care. But what about the confidence level? You got to have the confidence level too, because you have to set your patient at ease. And one thing she said to me is, you're so competent. Let's work on your confidence and how you come across, because you're so natural. That's what she used to tell me. And I was like, what does that mean? Because as a bedside nurse, you only see the patients you're caring for. You don't see the political side of healthcare or the things that, might not be the pleasant side of healthcare. And how do you walk through that? And how do you handle that? For a long time, my mouth probably got me in more trouble than it needed to, because I always wanted to be transparent. And that's emotional intelligence, really looking at your audience and knowing how to tailor the conversation as to who is in the room. And one thing Diane did for me is she listened. She was a very active listener and didn't say a whole lot. And as I've grown, I'm like, I don't know if I can ever be that leader that just listens, because I do talk a lot, but I'm a very extroverted person, a big personality. But having those active listening sessions really allowed me to kind of focus on what I was talking about. And she would give me takeaways from the conversation. And then the best thing she did was follow up. So it wasn't like, go do X, Y, and Z and good luck with your life. It was that constant reassurance of, okay, this is how you did in this situation. She also would provide the scenarios for me to practice, right? We talk about skills for nurses as a newly licensed nurse, but how do we start pouring into our leaders? And some of that's basics, right? Go talk to this team member about X, right? And then we panic because we're like, well, I don't know how to have that conversation. That's hard. And she just started chipping away at allowing me to have a little more confidence in my ability to not only talk to people in the right manner, but really follow up with me and give me sometimes that feedback that wasn't so pleasant to hear, but allowed me to sit back and reflect and then continue to grow forward. So I'm super grateful for her. I wish I could work with her again. But again, God has blessed me with great leaders in my life that have all walked alongside of me and really showed me how to lead.
Okay, so Stacey, now that you mentioned that story, I think it relates so well to our service standards. Obviously, we wanted to talk to you about you winning the Own It Service Standard Award. So do you mind explaining what this award means and how you earned this?
Sure. So I can tell you it's never the lone rider ever. It is a team effort. So with our four service standards, I do believe Own It is one of the hardest one to live up to because it's about self-reflection and accountability and having that integrity when no one's looking. So the Own It Service Award was a huge accomplishment for our team to be able to showcase all the work that we've done. So that actual award was presented to us for our standardization of not only a robust residency program, but also starting the standardization of education on the inpatient units in the emergency room. So being able to be highlighted with that with David Otati was such a gift and such a blessing because that's our vision. We want to strive to provide that competent care, but we want to do it in a way that makes a difference. We don't want to check a box. I am not a box checker. I want to make a big show out of it and get people excited to come to work and be able to grow their career and have the opportunity and platform to do so.
Thank you so much, Stacey. And obviously, your story is just so inspiring. And I think those that are listening, and in fact, I know that those are listening have so many things that they can take from what you've shared with us today. So what is the one thing that you hope listeners take from this conversation today?
I think that the biggest reflective point would be that remember God's purpose for your life is something greater than you'll ever imagine. And you just have to walk in faith each day that He's got great things for you. And it may not be exactly what you think it'll be. It might include not passing your boards and questioning your nursing career. But that He is going to surround you with who you need and what you need to continue to be successful as long as you stay the course and stay diligent and remain passionate. So I want everyone to know that their career should fill their bucket every single day. And that doesn't mean that every day is great. It doesn't mean that every day you don't want to think about a different career, but it does mean that that joy that might not be a fluffy feeling, but that constant joy of moving forward in your career is something that you continue to strive for.
Thank you so much, Stacey. That is so inspirational, and everyone listening, I should say, has something to be able to take away from that. So I so appreciate your time today, and we are grateful to have had you on the Whole Career Podcast. Thank you so much for listening.
My pleasure. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for listening to the Whole Career Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platform to stay up to date with the latest episodes. And if you have any questions or topics that you'd like us to cover, feel free to reach out to us on our Instagram @Life at Advent Health. Until next time, take care.